And gentlemen, greetings and a very warm welcome to you from all corners of the world. We are delighted to have you here with us today for an enlightening and forward-thinking webinar brought to you by BVI Finance and the HLSTC Robert McTavius Institute for Financial Services. I'm Adriana Soveral, Marketing and Media Relations Coordinator from BVI Finance. This webinar titled ChatGPT and its impact on jobs, a topic we believe is incredibly timely and pivotal in this era of rapid technological advancement. Artificial intelligence, or AI, has become an inseparable part of our daily lives, accelerating our tasks and reshaping traditional industries. Among the various AI technologies, one name stands out predominantly, or the ChatGPT more recently, a state-of-the-art language developed by OpenAI. Its influence on the job market has been profound, creating new opportunities while challenging existing roles. Over the course of this webinar, we will delve into the depths of ChatGPT, exploring its capabilities and its implications for the world of work. We will address key questions such as what's the current and potential impact of ChatGPT on various job sectors? How can businesses and individuals adapt to this technological shift? And what does the future of work look like in an AI-infused world? We have a distinguished panel of experts, including AI researchers, academics, and business leaders. They will share their insights, discuss the opportunities and challenges, and help us all navigate this new landscape with a balanced and informed perspective. We aim to not only inform, but also inspire dialogue and foster a better understanding of the changes we are experiencing. Whether you are a business leader seeking to leverage AI, an employee pondering the future of your job, a student eyeing the job market, or a policy maker shaping the future of work, this webinar promises to be an enlightening experience. So without further ado, let's dive into the world of AI, with a special focus on ChatGPT and its impact on jobs. Please sit back and relax, and let's explore the future work together. And now I'll hand you over to the director of the HLS RMI, Chidi Vibird.
Thank you so much, Adriana, and a pleasant good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to our webinar on ChatGPT and its impact on jobs. I'm honored to be your host for today's exciting discussion. Joining me is a panel of experts who will share their insights on how ChatGPT is changing the job market, and what opportunities and challenges it presents for professionals across various industries. But before we begin, I'd like to say a special thanks to our partner in everything FinTech, Ms. Elise Donovan and her team at BVI Finance for their support in making this webinar possible. I would also like to advise you that we will be having a question and answer section at the end of the discussion. However, persons can write their questions in the chat section, and the panelists will try to address some of your questions during the discussion if time permits. Now, let's meet our panelists. First, we have with us Keith Carter. Keith's mission is help businesses and governments effectively use technology. Keith is lead partner, technology strategy at KBC Global Partners. He's an IE University Fellow at the Center of Governance of Change. He's a past awarded professor of National University of Singapore, Bretton Woods Committee member on the Digital Finance Subcommittee, where he helps achieve the mission, improve the performance of the international financial institutions through public dialogue, advocacy, and policy analysis. We also have with us Donald Farmer. Donald, if you could wave at the person so they can see who you are. Donald is a British data science expert, entrepreneur, and thought leader in the field of business intelligence and data analytics. He received his bachelor's degree in mathematics and computer science from the University of Edinburgh in 1984 and completed his PhD in artificial intelligence at the same institution in 1988. Donald worked for companies such as Microsoft and founded his own data visualization, analytics, software firm, Hive Strategy. He has been named one of the top 20 most influential business intelligence analysts by Information Management and is currently the principal of his own consulting firm, Donald Farmer Consulting. Next, we have Ikuma Ueno. He's a lead strategist in Web 3.0 and crypto-based businesses. He manages a fund at SGverse and directs corporate strategy at Akiverse. He has extensive experience in crypto and has advised on fintech initiatives in blockchain and distributed ledger technology. Bueno?
That's right, bueno.
And finally, we have Leslie Harris. Leslie is a risk and compliance professional. She holds a BSc in International Relations and Political Science from the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. In 2020, she earned her FinTech practitioner designation with the University of Hong Kong. She currently works as a regional senior associate in the tax and legal department at PwC and is responsible for network and regulatory compliance in the areas of AML, accounting standards, data protection, and analytics. Other notable roles include serving as compliance analyst and risk compliance consultant. We welcome you, Leslie. Now, Keith, let's start with you. Can you give us an overview of what ChatGPT is and how it works?
Absolutely, and good morning, everyone. So glad to have all of you here today and to be part of this, conversation that just keeps escalating. The key thing I want you to take away from what I'm going to share is that these generative AI tools get you from 0 to 60% very fast, but they don't take you to 100%. So my position is we don't have to worry about losing jobs just yet. That said, there's another side to this that's a really positive story. AI can actually help to equalize access to education. And so in a time when things are changing faster than ever before, and there's perhaps not even enough resources or teachers and so forth around to get things in place, AI does provide access to information, answers to questions that can really help someone get started. Or get good enough, get to good, as well. So how does this work? Well, let me dive into an overview here for us, and I'll share my screen. Can you see my screen here, Chidi? Has it come up?
Yes, it's come.
Great. So let's discuss some of the business opportunities and risks. So all of us are made up of data, and these ChatGPT things are considered large language models. They pull thousands of years of data and terabytes, petabytes of data in. It's a tremendous effort because it's not just about putting the data in and reading it into the computer, but it actually has to be trained up. So I hope that you'll take away today a few additional keywords, everyone, that we need to know a little bit more. We hope you gain some things from that you'll be able to decide what you're going to do with the knowledge you gain from this. And I hope we can continue to grow a community of people that are interested in transforming. And so we'll take action as well. The first thing to consider taking action on is this. There are new skills that are necessary in this generative AI era. So let's connect the dots here. How do we get an answer from a generative AI? So generative AI means that it will generate information. It'll be able to take a corpus, a set of books, text, sentences, everything, and then we're able to say, ask it a question. It then uses probability in order to decide, well, how should I answer that? Note the word probability. You've all heard, oh, it doesn't answer things correctly sometimes. It comes up with things because it's just guessing. It doesn't know why. We have to limit it a little bit. It's not giving you an answer because it understands. It's giving you an answer because it's the most likely answer mathematically. So a driver to this is being a prompt master, being able to craft great prompts along the way. If you put in a silly prompt or something without enough detail or don't know how to talk to the AI, it'll give you bad responses. If you give it good context, give it good background, are able to shape your question, then it'll be able to optimize that. So that's a whole new role in a job. We can do strategic marketing with this stuff. I mean, competitor research to some extent, people will immediately say, well, Keith, ChatGPT doesn't read the internet. That's true. But Auto GPT does. And so then you can bring data in, you can do fine tuning even on the OpenAI models, and that allows you to pull that in and perhaps develop a strategy. Content creation, like I said, you get started really fast. And this is where some will be challenged. Okay, so I used to have to always go to a copywriter to get something done, but now I can at least get some of the copy ready, but it's still not professional, might not have that, phraseology that a human brings to the, so that means that content creators need to step up their game, but it also means that the very initial part can be a lot faster. Being able to get to ad copywriting, email marketing, and more. I think one of the key things I just want to highlight here too is there's another new role, which is integration and execution into your business. How does this fit in to your normal business process? And a question we should all be asking is, for years, people have been trying to do digital transformation at companies for years, right? And yet, every time IT brings a project in, puts in a new, business intelligence tool, business people are like, I don't have time, how's this helping me, etc. All of a sudden, this ChatGPT ends up on the scene and people are getting into it, loving it. We need to take a pause if you're on the call as an IT person, or if you're a business leader trying to figure out how digital transformation should occur, but it hasn't yet in your organization. Sit back and watch how ChatGPT has been, first of all, an awesome marketing program. And second of all, a really easy to use thing that you can just use at home. And as a result, you can use at work. And so you have to look very carefully. Well, the things that have transformed our lives, cell phones, computers, somehow we've always been able to use them at home first. So let's take an example here of one thing I love to do with ChatGPT, which is something called mental chess. It's where, you're going to send an email to someone, and it's always dangerous to send emails late at night, right? 11, 12, especially when you're like, oh, I'm going to respond to this. It's better to always go to sleep. But there's one thing that ChatGPT can kind of bring to the table, which is before you send an email, you might ask someone, hey, can you take a look at this? How might people respond? Another thing to do is to take this email and say to ChatGPT, hey, how would someone respond to this? So the example I have for you is in an HR department where there's learning and development for a new customer service officer, we can have that customer service officer go back and forth with ChatGPT as a training session. How should I respond to a banking customer that's frustrated because my banking app is slow? So let's take a look at this example. First of all, of course, the customer is at home and thinking, oh man, again, my app is so slow. How can I, get the customer service to pay attention? So the person is going to ask, and by the way, ChatGPT isn't the only tool that's out here. I'm demonstrating Elk's AI as well. And so the customer could say, hey, my banking app's really slow. Help me write a letter to customer service. And boom, it's going to write this letter for you. That's not going to be too bad, right? Yeah, listen, I expect a smooth app. If you could look into the matter, it's very professional. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Okay. It took what would have been a 20-minute exercise, and in 5 seconds, I have an email as a customer I can send in. Now, I bring that over into the IT department, and the IT department person is going to say, who's getting trained, might also say to ChatGPT, hey, I just got this email from the customer. How should I respond? Well, this is funny. We have an AI talking to itself, basically, right? The customer and also the person who is in customer service are both using the AI. Nothing wrong with that. They say, thanks for bringing it to our attention, right? We apologize for the inconvenience. This is what we would expect to say. We appreciate your feedback. We'll do everything we can to resolve it, right? Thanks for your patience. Now, before the customer service agent sends this, they might want to just double check, hey, how will the person respond? So I can ask, well, what questions might the customer have about this response? ChatGPT will give you kind of this mental chess. Well, let's see, what might the person say? The customer might have the following responses. Hey, you didn't tell me any specific steps you're going to take to resolve this thing. And you know how frustrating that is. Or how long will it take for the issue to be resolved? You might also be ready for, hey, is there any compensation for this, right? And so forth. So now the customer service agent has some good things to kind of be prepared for how the customer might escalate this, or they might want to tweak that initial email and provide some of these details if they have access to it. Now, this is where ChatGPT, kind of falls over. If the customer service, and I'm just going to blank my screen for a second, just so we can pay attention. If the customer service agent, and I can ask the moderator or someone just to make sure I'm to pin my screen here. If the customer service agent said, hey, my boss is out of town. ChatGPT, can you help write an email to give me a reason why I can't escalate this matter higher, right? Now, as a human, we'd get it. Okay, your boss is out. Let's give some reasons as to why we shouldn't escalate this. But as a computer, it still takes that to the letter of what you said. So this is where prompt engineering is so important. My boss is out of town, so write a response that I can't escalate it. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. We understand the importance. Now, here's the thing. It says, unfortunately, as my boss is out of town, I'm unable to escalate this issue. Can you imagine if you got that from a customer service agent from a bank or something? That would be like, what? How could you say something like this? So please don't just copy and paste ChatGPT responses into your email and press send. Always check first, because it might have something in its parent. It only took 5 seconds to create this, but it's going to take you a few minutes to read it and just make sure that it's right and so forth. So expect that it's going to get you to 60%, not 100%. Okay, so what do we get from that whole discussion there is that there's this really new role. You can't just go into ChatGPT and just say, answer a question. And that's where we're getting in the news. Oh, it gave us the wrong answer. And then on the other side, you're seeing, hey, it can pass the bar exam. How come these are two? It seems like, why would it give wrong answers and yet pass the bar exam? It's because the person who asked was probably either tricking or not giving it enough context and so forth. I encourage you, if there's one other thing to take away from this whole discussion today, try it out. Use this for yourself as much as possible. Okay, the next aspect of this is just fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? We keep, regardless of what side of politics you're on, what newspaper you read, Fox News, Washington Post, whatever, technology, Wired, they all are saying ChatGPT is coming for your job. And I would say this is fake news. So why is that? Because never before in human history have we seen technology increase, technology revolutionize, and there's been less jobs. That has never happened. Think about it. From farming to industry, more jobs. From industry to internet, more jobs. From internet on to artificial intelligence and space exploration, there's going to be so many more jobs. And so, well, why is that, Keith? How come all these very smart people are saying this? I'm not sure, but let's go into, maybe we can take and sit back and have a calm, orderly response to this as organization leaders and business folks and government folks. We have to provide people with an orderly movement from the old roles to the new higher value roles. It was such a wonderful time to be alive right now. We haven't seen this since 100 years ago, when the electric engine was replacing and even the regular engine, the gas engine, the car was replacing horse and buggy. Electricity was coming into people's houses. The telephone was replacing mail couriers. Those are all things people were mystified. Wow, look at, and this pace was a bit slower, But still, people were shocked. Oh, look at that car. It makes a lot of noise. It's so slow. You should ride a horse. And we know what happened to that argument. Remember, some of you in the audience might remember there were banks of typists that had to type out every memo because they didn't have copy machines. Those are not here anymore, but the banks, the businesses are so much bigger. So what should every company have on its wall? A chart that shows, listen, these are 100% of the old jobs. They're going to disappear. This is just a fact. If we don't have typists anymore that are just creating memos for customers, that doesn't exist. We hardly have horseshoe makers, right? These things do change, but we still have transportation people. We still have communication jobs. And so there's going to be 150% more new jobs. So when I'm here in Singapore, one of the great companies out here in Singapore had put together a plan. They said, let's put robots onto our manufacturing floor. And with that, they began to advise all the line supervisors, look, we're going to have the line supervisor roles disappear, but we're going to have many more robot supervisor roles. And so they said, we're going to be able to train you. We're going to have more jobs because the manufacturing plant's going to run 365, 24/7 like we've never run before. And don't you know that people were excited about getting upskilled? They knew the uncertainty was gone. They knew there were roles ahead for them. And your best employee tends to be your current employee with a bit more support and skills. So why, though, did ChatGPT jump onto the scene? How did all this data get together? Where, a lot of companies are even struggling to get the regular data together to get basic insights. Well, all of us on the phone probably have used Google Maps, right? So, and anyone using the Google Maps subscription version? No, right? No one uses the subscription version. But what does Google Maps provide for us? It provides an answer to 3 questions that every business leader wants, and also we as people want too. Where are we today? How to win? And are we winning? And so as you look at this, if I move from one part of Singapore and I need to get to the Singapore Science Center, there's a few things that I want to know. I have precious time and money. My time, if it's not as important as money, I can take the train. It'll take me an hour and 20 minutes. Or Google give me another option. I can take a taxi and it's going to cost me more, $30. But if I have an urgent region to get there, it only take 30 minutes. We all know this, but this is why we love Google Maps. Why does Google Maps provide this? Because Google's whole focus is how do we get enough data in order to provide advertising to you so we know you, right? We want every interaction to be captured. And so with this, we get to understand that data is so critical, and these ChatGPT developments are founded upon having enough data for an AI to know what to do next. So it's not just about text, everyone. Generative AI also includes vision, includes art. And this is where artists and other folks have gotten really scared about things as well. So how can we quickly go in and get an idea to a whole campaign and have a creative brief established in just a few moments? And that's by using something called like a creative brief development tool that pulls together your ChatGPT as well as your generative AI like Midjourney or DALL-E. And generative AI for art lets you get not only your text put together, but also, hey, maybe how am I going to have a vision of this? How can it look? So if I'm based here in Singapore and I want to create a campaign for a Japanese bank, one of the things I'm going to be able to do is, because it's Singapore, I'll be able to quickly know, okay, these are the places I can advertise in Singapore. ChatGPT gives me that information immediately. It also gives me some prompt ideas. Hey, these are different ways that I might want to have this put together. And then now I've got a visual here that actually gets us driven. Oh, wow. Do I want the Japanese bank to be, the front part of the bank? Do I want the credit card to be? And I have a direction to go with the advertising and media firm. So you don't need to only use this for your regular writing. You can also use it for the next part of your business too, which is being able to demonstrate and show off your art that you want to have, your next great campaign. It should take seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes to start off a great creative brief these days in order for marketing and development to come together. The last demo here, we can't leave aside education. Your kids are already using ChatGPT and Midjourney. If you don't know that what they're using it for, tonight is the time, on our side is nighttime. This morning is the time to go and figure that out as well. Sit with them. But we also very much encourage that equal access to education. We believe it's possible through AI. And so parents and education can really come through here. And there's an application here, which is called Just Ask Prof. It's free for people to come in and use as a research preview. And you get to go in and see and sit with your son or daughter or your niece or nephew and go through with them during those times when you're trying to prepare for the tough standardized tests. Maybe it's the SAT. Over here, we call it the primary school leaving exam and O-levels as well. And I don't know about you, but when my kids were going through O-levels and other exams, I was like, oh, biology, chemistry, I have to remember from how many years ago. I don't want to say how many decades it's been. I don't want to give away my age here. But just as a point, let's take a look at a quick view of what this could look like. So you can set up very quickly into this type of tool and say, give me a quiz on biology. And so it'll give you questions and you can type in, well, hey, I have a question here. In the human body, which organ is responsible for pumping blood? Well, the heart. Or you can say, it can ask you questions about where is it, what's happening with the parts of an animal cell. And you can just type in your answers actually. And by going ahead and typing in your answers, you're getting this interaction with an entity that's kind of friendly. It's not just this in the past where we always had a question and answer and so forth. And you can go and ask, more questions of it, thoughtful questions. Maybe you're not sure and what have you as well. And if you're correct, hey, it says correct, let's move to the next question and so forth. These type of systems mean that, and were created because we believe, again, that education needs to go everywhere. And AI can certainly help that. If you wanted to say, well, what's the term for a substance can't be broken down? It goes, I typed in atom, and unfortunately then it said, well, close, this element, right? And it actually, and at the end, can give you a report card. And you can ask, hey, so what topics did I miss? And after that, it's able to share with you, okay, well, the topics that you missed, here's a summary. So it's going back and forth with you and having a good discussion, and you're learning along the way with AI. What does this mean? How does it impact people around the world? So for some of us, for teachers, they might, oh, wow, how the kids are going to get answers, I need to change the way I ask questions. That's all true. But we also forget that hundreds of countries around the world don't have enough teachers. I was in one country here in Asia, Cambodia, and I rode past one of the high schools and I say, hey, that looks like a great high school. It's huge. And the guy said, look, there's a problem though. Our kids can only go to school half a day. We don't have enough teachers in order for them to get a full day worth of high school, 8 hours. I was, shocked by that. And I said, look, wow, at the high school level, for your most formative years, for critical years, for your sciences, math, everything, they're not getting access to the, a full education. So this is where AI can come in and really expand and let people access that once they get back to their house. And so that's why I said at the beginning, I hope you'll take into account, what can you do? What can we do together to make a difference? So our key takeaways here are that AI can help us start things fast. We can start off a project and get to fast, but not 100%. We need to maintain human relations. I hope that the battle between the customer service agent and the customer don't devolve just into two AIs talking to each other. I really do hope that companies realize that this is not the time to let headcount go. This is the time to give people access to these tools and let them be a force multiplier to delight customers like we haven't in the past. Never in human history have we had less as technology reduced jobs. And finally, we have an opportunity for us to see how to radically change them and make a difference. So let us not love with words and speech alone, but with actions and in truth. All right. And that is it for me.
Thank you, Keith. So Keith, you mentioned that ChatGPT will create new jobs 100% more, right? And you've shown us how ChatGPT works, and you've shown how it increases efficiency. We've shown us that how we can make our job more efficient, save some time, and so forth. Now, according to Goldman Sachs, they say that at least 300 million jobs around the world will be automated. And some persons fear that their job, especially if the job is extremely repetitive and a routine type work, will disappear. What advice can you give to persons within these roles? What can they do to ensure that their job remains secure?
You want me to answer that first and everyone else to come in?
Yes.
So I think that it's a trite response, but the first thing is to continue to experiment with these technologies. Try them out. That's the first thing, because then you're going to find out that the hype, we heard a lot of hype about metaverse. We were all going to be in the metaverse a few years ago. We were all going to be, wearing Google Glass 10 years ago, and so forth. So there's always this hype that comes out, and I don't think the analysts ever, I don't know how often they're held to account. But the other aspect is that this is an opportunity for you to see how to make your job, your current job, an even higher value job. How can you respond to your boss even faster? How can you respond to your customer faster? And then, of course, you're going to be more valuable.
Okay, so as an educator, what skills educators need to have? What they need to change regarding education?
One thing is, don't ask, think back to the Wikipedia. If you're old enough, think back to the Wikipedia days. And remember in the late 90s, 2000s, teachers were throwing up their hands. Kids can just copy Wikipedia now. You're not allowed to use Wikipedia. And now we allow kids to reference it, right? Same with ChatGPT. It's going to be, how do I reframe my pedagogy, my classroom, so that kids can use ChatGPT? One question I like to ask is, okay, students, go and use ChatGPT to summarize the book, but then tell me where are the errors and what's missing from the summary. Now the student really has to work, because they have to beat ChatGPT. Anyway, that's just one idea.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you, Keith, is that the skills that would need to be developed within the educational system would be more of the soft skills. We would need to focus more on perhaps critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, and communication. Educational system would also need to prioritize development of skills alongside the traditional academic subjects. So perhaps we need to introduce things like digital literacy and encouraging lifelong learning, and perhaps integrate technology to enhance teaching and learning. You agree with that?
I agree with that, yes.
Okay, Donald, you are an expert in the field of business intelligence and data analytics. How do you think ChatGPT would impact the job market in the next few years? And what sort of roles or industries might emerge as a result?
Well, it has already impacted my job. You read out a lovely biography of me at the beginning of this webinar, which was written by ChatGPT, and it's completely wrong in every detail. I asked ChatGPT to write a biography of Donald Farmer, and it went away and it just made up something. So all these great things you said about me were were not true. So here's the really interesting thing for me is that automation in general, not just artificial intelligence, but automation in general, it takes away the jobs that are done by people we don't care about. Now, it's very important to say that it doesn't take away the jobs we don't care about, but if we don't care about the people, then we don't care who does the job. If you jump in a taxi at the airport, get a taxi to the office, do you really care about the taxi driver? I mean, if it was an automated taxi, if it was self-driving, and you got there safely and you got there quickly, would that be okay? If you don't care about that journey, you just regard it as a utility, then you don't care who does it. And you don't care who makes your clothes, and you don't care who creates your food, and therefore, who cares who does those jobs? Those jobs will disappear very quickly because there's nothing in that job that will keep your attention, if you like, and keep your human focus that requires human empathy. Now, I think of, if I'm looking for a nurse, if I'm looking for a carer, then I absolutely need somebody with human empathy. Robot's not going to help. A robot might be efficient, but it's not going to help. It's very interesting to me that in most of our human interactions, we actually prefer if we don't have to deal with human beings. I live in Seattle, which is a rainy, very famous for its rain and its wet weather. I see people lining up outside the bank to use an ATM machine. They could go inside the bank and talk to a human being, but they prefer to use the ATM machine. I see in the supermarket people lining up for the automated checkout rather than the human checkout. Why? Because they don't care about that interaction. They actually prefer not to have that interaction. So there's a whole class of jobs that will disappear because we don't care about the people. Now, I think Keith is absolutely right. There are other classes of jobs that will come in. And what's really interesting then is what will those jobs be like? Well, they will be jobs where we care about who they are. One of the things that we do as human beings all the time is we try to show our status. We try to show our wealth. We try to show our success in life. That's just a very natural human thing. And one of the ways we do that is we buy expensive things, and things are expensive because they're made by other human beings. And therefore it shows that we are successful because this, cashmere sweater that I'm wearing required the labor of 5 people, 20 people to make it. And therefore I can show off my ability. So we'll start looking for more and more goods, services, entertainments where the use of other people's labor and input is required. So you'll see agriculture become, for example, much more specialized. You'll see organic, artisanal foods, artisanal creations, whether it's coffee or whether it's the vegetables that we grow, become more focused on the human input to that. So we're going to see this human input required all the time, and that area will grow. And the areas where we don't care if it's a human being or not, that will disappear. My job, strangely, and I joke about my job being affected, but my job, which is mostly analyzing what's going on in industry and giving people advice, could disappear too. It's remarkable that artificial intelligence is really good at being fluent and being convincing. That's actually its great power, but it's also its great danger. Can I share my screen just very briefly? Can I show you this? I'm going to try and show you something. Let me see if you can share.
I can see it.
I think that. Sorry, I think that froze up when I shared. Can you see an image on screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is somebody eating noodles. I asked artificial intelligence, draw somebody eating a bowl of noodles. It's a beautiful picture. It's beautifully rendered. It's very convincing. And like my resume, my CV at the beginning, it's completely wrong. There's somebody with one chopstick. There's somebody with 2, 3 chopsticks, or somebody with a chopstick which magically turns into a spoon. All the fingers are wrong. All the fingers are horrible. And yet it's a convincing and beautifully produced image. This is both the power of AI. It's very convincing on the surface, but as soon as you look into it, all the details are wrong. And that's one of the dangers of AI. Ironically, the danger is it's so good at what it does that it's convincing. And we are going to, we're going to have to watch this very, very carefully. So this is my concern, is that we need to care more about people, because it's people we don't care about who are actually going to be affected. And this is probably the problem that the world's going to face from now on, that we need to be much more interested in our fellow human beings if we're going to not turn into a society of automated drudgery.
Okay, so Donald, so what would these people need to do? For instance, the customer service representatives, the data entry clerks, translators, accountants, lawyers, writers, journalists, these persons whose jobs will be automated by ChatGPT. Where do they go? What do they need to do to not lose their jobs?
Well, one of the things they need to do is actually in their existing work, emphasize the human element. You're not going to want to, the taxi driver, the customer representative, the account representative who is actually deeply human and engaging and interesting and fun and interested in you as a customer is somebody you're not going to want to get rid of. You have a nice conversation with them, you call up the call center. If the person in the call center is just pushing buttons and saying, okay, I've reorganized your flight, or I've made that transfer, or here is the answer, I've opened the ticket for you. That's not as interesting as having a conversation with someone. So one of the things they can do is actually, reinforce the human element of what they're doing themselves, which they will also, by the way, find more interesting. But of course, they have to develop new skills as well. And the skills that they need to develop are the skills of working with automation rather than against automation. But there's no doubt that many jobs will be transformed, and it's not a bad thing if we can retain the human element. So that's something we need to work pretty hard at, is not becoming ourselves a form of human automation. We have to emphasize the human element in our work.
Okay, so Colin Hines says that, good morning, all banks have been encouraging customers to use ATMs and online banking to alleviate crowded banking halls. And we have someone who has raised their hand, but we have 152 persons. I'm not seeing. Trevon, can you assist with that? I saw a few hands raised earlier. 1 or 2 persons wanted to ask a question. Okay, so Sergio, what's your question, Sergio?
Chidi, Sergio had his hand up. I can allow him to speak.
Okay.
One moment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Sergio.
Yeah. No, I was just adding into in terms of the education sphere. In the higher ed, there's the pros and cons to the ChatGPT. So kind of like what Keith was mentioning, the pros and cons to this. So in higher ed, though, there are some cons where students may use this to help write their papers, and if you don't have the mechanisms in place to detect that sort of as we will say, call it cheating, then it will turn out being bad for the institution. So you have to get those mechanisms in place. But then on the pro side of things, they're showing that you could help. ChatGPT can help with personalizing learning experience and improving teaching and grading efficiencies and so forth. So, like higher ed institutions will want to look into plagiarism platforms to help with detecting on the con side of things, and even with maybe electronic quizzes and so forth. So I just wanted to interject that part of it.
Anyone wants to respond to Sergio?
I'd love to pass it over to anyone else so I don't take up more time. My first thought is simply, Sergio, that sure, it's true, right? Students, if they start to lean on ChatGPT right when they're writing essays, they don't necessarily learn how to write. They don't go through that process of thinking through. And so they can become very mechanical. But it's kind of like trying to decide when the calculator should be used in school as well. At some point, you do want to introduce it. So once you have the basic concepts. So I think the educators need to think very carefully as to when it should be brought in, and also give advice, hey, when you're learning multiplication, do some by hand. You have a calculator, sure, everyone does, but try to do some by hand so you understand what the calculators do.
And yes, Keith, yeah, thanks for saying that, because some will say, well, you can use it at the first stage of doing drafts, like drafts for your writing and that kind of stuff. It can aid you with getting your draft done, but don't rely on it 100%. And, just use it for the draft, and then get the feedback from the lecturer, and then use that as a starting point.
Well, you can, yeah, and there's other things you can do, Sergio. My neighbor here is a teacher of English language and drama. And so she understands perfectly well that her students are going to use ChatGPT. So she asks them questions now, such as, use ChatGPT to write an essay about Romeo and Juliet. And, part of the skill there is, what is the best prompt that you can give? Create a great prompt and get a good answer from ChatGPT, and then come to the class prepared to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the answer. So she's not asking the students to go out and write their own essay. She knows they won't. She's saying, yeah, but you need to be able to criticize what's come out. You need to be able to create a great essay using ChatGPT, and you need to be able to criticize it. So she's turned her way of thinking around from, this is a tool that people will use to replace a human skill, to what are the human skills which complement this technology? And that seems to me a pretty smart approach for a teacher to take.
Yeah. Totally agree with you guys, yeah. And I like the word tools, because I was thinking back on in different, at what Keith mentioned, as technology continues to evolve in different fields, you have different tools, and tools evolve, but it doesn't necessarily take away your job. You just become more efficient because you have these tools that helps you with efficiency.
Yes, and I guess it's a good time for us to address the issue of regulation. Can ChatGPT be regulated? Ikuna?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like similar to Web3, but the ChatGPT is still in a niche market, but it's very useful tool. When you are thinking like, if you have to like research about, hey, what's the population of blah, 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 they're able to give you a prompt response. If you're able to use that as a tool, it's going to be a very, very powerful, but you're never able to give them an authority or be responsible of what they're saying. So like, for example, the consulting firms, like I'm not gonna name like which one, but some of the consulting firms have already banned using a ChatGPT, because simply it's just a tool. And second, they're not able to take any responses because it's just an automated tool, right? So like in terms of that, people gotta realize who is making that decision, who is making that word, so that it's gonna be changing whatever the investor, whatever the business person, the decision that they're gonna make, like who's gonna be responsible for that. I mean, there's so many like jobs that could be replaced by ChatGPT, but you just always need to think that who is responsible for whatever that statement that you're making. So it's kind of very similar to like Web3. It's gonna be heavily regulated, for sure, and it's not gonna be like the major streamline, unless if the human just forget what to think, and if they don't have any minds or their sense of like the statement that they're gonna make in terms of businesses. So yeah, I guess like some of the countries like EU countries where they are very heavily regulated in terms of like the KYC, the privacy, etc. I think the ChatGPT and the AI in general will first be banned, and slowly they'll be easing the capability of the AI itself. So that's my view. So.
And thank you. And Leslie, can you step in here and share your views on regulation?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
So, as Ikuma said, in the EU countries and the UK as well, is going to be banned, and that's because of GDPR. The main concern with regulators right now is that there's no legal basis for the collection of all of this data and the storage of it. The issue with ChatGPT is that when you put data in, it doesn't come out, it stays there, and that directly contravenes their GDPR laws. The US also has a bill which was put forward by the Biden administration. It's called the Blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. And they also outline similar concerns. They talk about algorithmic discrimination, which is really and truly a mirror of GDPR. I think that regulators are definitely going to have to take a closer look at their data privacy laws. It's not something that can be done in such a small space as the Caribbean. So I think in the next couple of days, the G7 will meet and we'll have to see the outcome of that.
Okay, and what some of the things the regulators can do? What advice would you give to them? What sort of strategies they need to start putting in place now?
Well, they definitely do need to start training on AI tech such as ChatGPT. They also need to start investing in what we call in fintech sometimes reg tech, which is regulatory technology, which can help to monitor AI powered programs and just regulation in general. So they have a lot of investments to make. ChatGPT is looking as though it's going to provide a bit more jobs in that area than anticipated, given the manpower that's going to be needed in order to regulate it. As Ikuma said, it will be heavily regulated. And yeah, it's definitely going to take us a couple years across the board to get everything sorted.
It seems like it's going to be quite costly to regulators.
Yes, money will be an issue.
It's going to be quite a large amount of monies that regulators would have to spend to put the necessary systems in place.
If I made some colors on that, the ChatGPT itself, I think it's going to be giving out a lot of opportunities in the job itself. One thing you have to note is that the AI, the evolution, I should say, has fastened for 10 years at least. We weren't expecting this kind of like process and empowerment. I thought it's going to be longer. I thought this kind of like world will be coming like 2030 or 2040, but this is 2023 we're talking. And for monthly $9.9, I could just replace my interns and research analyst, say, hey, what's the population of that? What's the correlation of like Zimbabwe? You know, how many people who are involved in like Androids and iPhone, and how many like gamers out there? That's the research I want to ask. And I'd ask that interns who I'm hiring for like $3,000 per month, but for $9.9, I could just get that prompt for like 3 seconds. So what I can like imagine the future, and what I can make a statement here is that the people who utilizes AI will be replacing the people who does not utilize the AI itself. I'm not saying that AI will be replacing the human work, or I'm not gonna say like the AI is gonna be overtaking the people itself, and they're gonna be like slaving the people itself. But what I can say is that, you know, the AI is still utility, and unless they get some kind of feeling and emotions, we're still using AI as a tool. But yes, you guys need to like understand the capability. And if you're like aiming to become like an analyst, like a trader itself, you have to think again. I mean, the AI has more capability, more capacity, and the decision itself is more precise. And they don't make any faulty errors, like the human errors we say, like fat finger in a trading world. They're not going to make decisions. So, you know, you guys need to think about what's going to be happening and how you utilize AI, not being utilized by AI itself.
Okay, so SW says lots of questions on the regulatory level. There are privacy concerns, partly due to some feeling that they don't fully know how it works. Italy recently banned ChatGPT, for example, for privacy concerns. So can the speakers address this issue?
I mean, I can talk to it a little bit. Clearly, not knowing how something works gives us a lot of concern. Just it kind of gives us a sense of uncertainty and ambiguity. But then again, when you get a decision from a human being, if you get a decision from a bank manager, if you get a decision from a professor, do you know how their mind works? No, we don't. It's actually very difficult. Sometimes it's even difficult for human beings to explain their own, their own decisions. So to a certain extent, you know, we have a mechanical understanding that we could get of how certain algorithms work. We may have a comparative understanding that some answers are better than others, or some answers are more likely than others, because this is all probability. You ask for a loan, and it can come back and tell you, well, I know we ran these simulations, and in 90% of the cases, you weren't getting a loan. So comparatively, you can see, even though you don't know how the algorithm works, you can see that there was very little chance of you ever getting that loan. Or you can have a sort of absolute explanation. But I think the most likely thing is we learn to trust these systems in the way that we learn to trust human beings, because over time we see them as being reliable, and we see some of them as making better decisions than others. So the fact that we don't know how it works right now, it makes us very nervous. But in the future, we'll just adapt to these things. How many of us know how our cars work? How many of us know how a plane flies? Don't ask. You know, if you're going to get in a plane, you don't need to understand how a plane flies to trust that it flies. And I think that's the way in which this we'll get used to it. There does need to be regulation. And all these things I've mentioned, cars, electricity, planes, are highly regulated by people who do understand them. And you know what? We end up having to trust them as well. Sometimes that trust is misplaced. But that's the human situation, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I agree with Donald. Just to add, OpenAI, the company which is responsible for ChatGPT, they're actually trying to help other companies now come up with similar solutions. So everybody isn't going to be using ChatGPT to do their work. They might be using a version of that, but in terms of addressing like data concerns, they're providing that service where, you know, they're providing funding so you can actually create your own version of that. So I think, as Donald said, in the future, we will become a bit more comfortable with it as it will become more widespread.
Okay, so I think it's we're way past the time now. It's 10:34. So perhaps we can wrap up at this time. Just a quick word from each of you, and share some benefits and that you think that ChatGPT, and probably the limitations, quickly. Leslie, you're going to go first to wrap up?
Sure. So the benefits of ChatGPT for me is an advanced assistive tool. It can help to make our jobs a bit more efficient. We get tasks done faster. I don't see any harm in it once it is human-led. In terms of limitations, my only concern at this point is data. The field that I work in, which is legal services as well as tax, we just can't afford data breaches or privacy breaches. So those are my only concerns, but all in all, it is a good basis to build upon in terms of having tools like that available to the world at large.
Well, I'll go with what I think is a very positive thing. You know, these generative AIs that we're talking about, both ChatGPT and the art generators and the music generators that are coming, they are tremendous tools for human creativity. Go out and be creative with them. Write the book that you wanted to write the song that you wanted to write a poem in the style of Shakespeare, whatever. You can do that. Create a painting that you like. Now it unleashes all this creativity that currently is limited by our lack of energy, our lack of skill, or just our lack of time. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to go out and now do those things that we couldn't do before. So go for it, try it, be creative.
Ikuma?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to emphasize is that you actually need to recognize what's happening in the world and do not let yourself guard down and what's happening in the spaces. Unless if you just need to think, what's your value right now? Can the work you are doing be replaced by AI itself? Because AI is going to be evolving rapidly within this decade, and the add value, like what you can do. I mean, if you're doing a very simple work, it's going to be automated. But if you're able to utilize and be a powerful tool for the AI itself, then you'll have another opportunities, and putting it like a self-add value to yourself itself. So like you actually need to think the capability, the strength what you have in yourself, and AI becoming a tool, not the one that's driving yourself. You just need to control it, and in order to do that, you just need to think what's happening in the spaces. Do not escape. Do not think, oh, this is just happening in the minor spaces, but rather this is going to be a majority, and a lot of I'm going to say it loud. I mean, it's going to take a lot of opportunity jobs around the spaces at this moment. But in other words, there are many opportunities that's going to be creating another job itself.
Keith, before you go, I realize Erica has her hand up. Erica Smith-Penn. She wants to ask a question. Erica, go ahead. Oh, she said she got the answer. Many thanks. Okay, so Keith, go ahead.
All right. Well, I certainly enjoyed listening and learned some things too. Leslie, I thought that your point about security and data is so key. Companies do have to set policy as to when and why someone should use ChatGPT. That said, that the CIO or the chief security officer has to be really careful right now, because if you put in the written policy, you're allowed to use this and someone goes and uses it the wrong way, and you don't find out until the New York Times, that looks bad, and someone's going to be looking for how did this happen. So there's this, there's three ways to say, either no, or perhaps use a wrapper around ChatGPT so that a company can capture every input that employees put in, and at least then be aware and have legal disclosure and what have you. Or the third, and what I recommend, is make your own. There's a lot of open source tools out there. You get a skunkworks team and the company kind of trying it out, loading data in, seeing what it's like, because eventually there is going to be this war of how AI is going to be used. And so, and if you saw AlphaGo back in 2016 and Google's DeepMind, and the companies didn't pick up and say, hey, I'm investing in this, you're already 7 years behind. So there's an opportunity to kind of think about, what can I be doing? None of this happened in a vacuum. It didn't just appear overnight. It's 12, 15 years worth of work to get to where we are right now. But it's really exciting. And that said, I want to segue to our BVI FinTech program. I'm so glad that BVI House has put this together along with HLSTC and Robert Matavius Institute with Director Chidi Liebert as well. And so we're launching this second round of our FinTech program, which is starting May 15th. There in the chat is an application link. So if you're interested to hear more about it, come on in, sign up, and we will be running that through. You'll be able to use ChatGPT as your co-pilot during the course. Donald's one of the teachers, Ikuma as well, and we've got some other great professionals coming in that are going to be sharing with you over that course. So look forward to seeing you there too. Chidi, back over to you.
Yes, and thank you, Keith. I think it's very important for persons to recognize that for those in jobs of a routine nature, that it is important for them to consider upskilling and staying relevant in the face of technological change. I want to encourage the attendees to consider how they could adapt their skills and their knowledge to take advantage of the new opportunities that have been created by AI, such as ChatGPT and other emerging technologies. I want to say thank you for attending this webinar. We appreciate that you took the time out to attend this. And we want to encourage you to join us again tomorrow for our third information session for the FinTech training program. Keith will be here, and some of the persons who would have taken the course already, they would share their insights and what they did as well. So come on out and join us and see what the program has to offer. And it's an opportunity for you to upskill as well. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Cheers,
Thank you
guys.
for joining us.
And the link for the webinar is up in the chat. So if you're interested, click on that link. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.